Only slowly is the mantle of winter being cast aside to make way for a new spring. Already the icy margins are crumbling as the sun moves north and the slushy gruel begins to melt. And all around us there are exciting signs for the angler. With the birth of spring will come a much-awaited trout season and an opportunity to enjoy some sport. Scotland's famous River Spey is more renowned for its salmon fishing, but there are also excellent chances with native brown trout. Working out a long line to fish he's seen rising, we see Sandy Leventon. Better known in his present role as the editor of Trout and Salmon magazine, he wouldn't be behind such a notable desk if he didn't know a thing or two about game fishing himself. Notice how he carefully mends the line to slow down the speed of his fly. Good tactics in the strong currents and cold waters of spring. But it is also important to cover new water in your search for spring trout. And on a river like the Spey, deep wading may be essential. The choice of fly may not be so important as your style of presentation, which you hope will create that magic moment when a fish takes. Spey trout are noted for their fighting tenacity, and some anxious moments are going to elapse before Sandy gets his net under this one. As with any game fish, there has to be some give and take of line in order to protect the slender leader, and time spent hustling the fish only when it yields and then letting it run when it wants to will eventually see it coming safely nearer the net. Wild spey trout are good to eat, so this one goes in the bag. There are many rivers which need an annual injection of hatchery-reared fish to sustain stocks. This party of keen club members make sure that their waters are well replenished in time for the new season. And some of these fish are already of takeable size. It's then not long before anglers are out trying conclusions. For me, there's a special magic about the spring, which is seldom present during other seasons. But the knowing all-round angler makes the best of them all. All of nature is alive with awareness of the new birth. An agitated curlew shrieks defensively while I briefly seek its nesting site. Back on the Spey, rod designer Jim Bruce is trying out a double-handed hexagraph rod. This gives greater power than a tubular rod and produces an easy style and great water command. Little wonder that Bruce and Walker rods are now being acclaimed all over the world. But fishing for the camera can be frustrating as well. There are not very many of the fish we try to tempt which even bother to read the script. Many trout fishermen eagerly await the annual hatch of mayfly. This is the largest of the ephemerid species, and despite its all too short lifespan as a winged insect, it provides a superb diet for the fish, and at a time when trout will come into prize fighter trim. For some anglers, it may offer an opportunity of catching some of the biggest fish in the stream. As spring eases into summer, the sport of angling attracts many people who enjoy the challenge of catching or making their own bait. Here, champion angler Dave Roper collects bloodworms from a small pond. The bloodworm, the larva of the midge, is a popular bait with many coarse fishermen, and locations where they're found are closely guarded secrets. Starting off with the short tip section of his roach pole, Dave adds sections as required to cover the water. Here, there is no need for a reel and line. The cushioning effect of a piece of elastic and rod point are all that is needed to avoid breakage with small but match-winning fish. As soon as a bite is detected, the pole must be dismantled. This bream may not qualify as a trophy, but added to others Dave will catch today, it may give him a total weight of fish to win a championship. Should this not be his day, there is a special serenity in just watching her float. During the early summer, water with a different character may now find pike cleaning themselves in the fast water of a whirlpool. Although hungry, pike often need a big bait to entice them to the hook at this time of the season. But this bait does have a very provoking action, and the hatching olive duns dance merrily in the sunshine. Suddenly, a pike strikes Alan Triffitt's lure, and a tough fight ensues. Although lacking the great tenacity of game fish, there will be some anxious moments before this pike is safely in the net. As a predator, the pike can frequently grow to weigh in excess of 20 pounds, and the record is in excess of 40. It's good to have a pal on hand at such time, and as Alan grabs the net, he leaves Kevin Roberts in charge of the rod. Incidentally, I wonder when the last salmon climbed this ladder. A few final flurries from the fish are always inevitable when the net appears, but the moment soon comes when the pike slides safely over the rim of the net to make it one more for Alan's tally. Not a big fish, maybe 6 pounds. Some waters are deceptive, and what may look like a sizable river may turn out to be a small burn and smaller fish. But there's no doubt about the size of this river, for we are on Norway's mighty Vosso at Bolstadøyri during June, a time when the biggest fish of the year are likely to come in fresh from the sea. Odd Harrison has hooked one of these monsters, a fish of over 30 pounds. Even though the gilly makes a hash of gaffing it first time, Odd's prize is soon safely on the bank. A beautiful salmon of 32 pounds. Higher up the Vosso at Skorvelian, sport may not always be as brisk, but there are ample compensations from the beautiful scenery. The Hoe Pool is a favourite rendezvous for both anglers and big fish. And my wife Grace delights in trying her new hexagraph rod. With rod and camera we often make a good team, but the fish seem totally unaware of the starring role demanded of them today. Norway's greatest salmon river, the Tana, has produced fish up to 76 pounds. But even the massive Storfast pool at midnight does not want to yield its trophies. If the salmon angler has a mecca, it has to be the famed Alta River, laying several hundred miles north of the Arctic Circle in northern Norway. Once again, our angler is Odd Harrison. And he's busy casting a fly on the sandier beat. Sunk line tactics at this time are likely to produce the best results, for it is near the witching hour of midnight and the water is still very cold. Odd's hooked a fish, one that fights with great tenacity in this swift-flowing water. Suddenly the gilly whips it with the tailor, and into the boat comes a gleaming fish of 24 pounds. Incidentally, I got a fish as well. What a memorable night. The year moves on into high summer, and for many English anglers this represents a time when the crafty carp start to cruise near the surface. You could try for this carp using several methods. Fish weighing well into double figures are often taken on floating bread crust. But carp are essentially bottom feeders, and the biggest, sometimes exceeding 40 pounds, are usually caught on a sizable bait. Expert fisherman Brian Morland likes to stalk his fish and then seek to catch a specific carp. This one will do. All carp anglers have their favourite baits. Brian has just prepared a concoction of brown bread and sausage meat. It is not always easy to get the right consistency to keep it on the hook. Care must be taken to see that it doesn't fly off into orbit as he makes his next cast. His fish is still there, and he's made a fairly accurate cast too. I wonder if it will take. There's a tentative inquiry. And then strike, and the fish is on. It's not a big one by any means, and it's soon ready for Brian's net. There's an old rhyme which suggests that hops and turkeys, carps and beer came to England in the same year. These thick leathery lips don't always make it easy to remove the hook, but this fish looks little the worse for wear, and so it can go back to grow a bit more and perhaps give sport again on another day. For many British anglers, however, there's a special challenge to be found in the swifter water of our trout rivers, like this chalk stream in East Yorkshire, and where you can often see the fish you hope to catch. Having decided on the fly the fish are taking, it is helpful to have a reasonable artificial on hand, and then to be able to present this to the fish without frightening it away. This one is easily fooled by Doug Brody's fly, and he is now in contention with a fine chalk stream trout. Following a few spirited runs, the fish is soon ready for the net, and it seems to be the sort of day when Doug might well catch a few more. If the chalk streams of England have world renown, the Beaverkill River in New York, USA, is hallowed ground for many Americans. It was from here that the late Theodore Gordon compared notes with our much revered Frederick Halford, and the Beaverkill is regarded as the birthplace of American fly fishing techniques. Slightly less known, but equally attractive, are the trout streams of the Smoky Mountains in North Carolina. Unlike our chalk streams, the Davidson River is entirely rain-fed, and although the trout may not grow to be very big, they still offer a great challenge and take the angler through some breathtaking scenery. It's not quite the same as fishing at home. You have to keep a wide ear open for rattlesnakes. On another nearby stream, local expert Dwight Howell casts his fly for rainbows. Fishing bow and arrow style keeps his fly from tangling with the branches. He has to rely more on stealth than long casting. But he's soon hooked a nice fish, and it will not be long before he has it carefully unhooked and returned to the water. It seems a bit like fishing in Lilliput. Way down south in Texas, this large float and a shrimp bait offers a good way of catching drum or spotted sea trout. As the line is retrieved in jerks, the float makes a popping sound in the cloudy water. This noise, instead of frightening, causes the fish to investigate, and it is not long before Grace has a nice one in play. They're said to be good eating, but this one goes back to grow a bit bigger. We're back in North Carolina, but this time afloat on the wide Atlantic, 40 miles off Cape Hatteras and looking for big game. As usual, there's a Bruce and Walker rod for every need, and several tackles are already trailing astern from the outriggers. Suddenly there's action on deck, and with a hard-fighting dolphin, Grace will have to work to bring it alongside to the mate and his waiting gaff. No marlin or sailfish around, but it's late in the season, and we might well have to be content with dolphin. Grace has hooked another, and by its lively display, it looks bigger than average. These are the true dolphin fish, not porpoises, and they are regarded as highly sporting and superb eating. They average between 5 and 15 pounds, but the present world record runs to a massive 76 pounds. And yet another nice one comes safely aboard. But we're not finished with Cape Hatteras just yet, so it's back to harbour to try our luck from the beach. As capes go, Hatteras is pretty unimpressive, but it forms a point into the ocean where the Gulf Stream meets the Labrador Current and where a vast cauldron of migrating fish often assemble. This heavy lure represents the small fish we see writhing on the surface. Let's hope that it will delude one of the many albacore which are attacking them. Now let's see if one will take. Ken's hooked one, and as it goes flying off through the surf, he must wait patiently for this first run to tire it and thus avoid a break. Slowly the fish comes back, and with assistance from the tide, Ken is able to pick it up and show us a nice fish of about 7 or 8 pounds. Well done. Early morning at Port Aransas, Texas, and once again we are heading seawards to try conclusions with big game fish. Oil rigs make great fishing places. Refuse from the rigs attracts small fish, which in turn bring in the chain of predators from kingfish to marlin, and our mate puts on a big bait just in case. Pretty soon Grace has hooked one, but it's only a small kingfish, and it's not long before it's alongside and ready for the gaff. The kingfish, or king mackerel, is a popular sporting fish in many parts of the world. But we keep hoping for something bigger, and it's not long before our skipper is consulting his charts and is on the move to a new venue, almost 50 miles from port. Now it's my turn to play a fish, while Grace grabs the camera. A blackfin tuna of about 35 pounds. Undoubtedly the biggest fish of the trip so far. Thousands of miles to the north, and a mighty brown bear crosses Alaska's Kulik River in search of salmon. The bulk of this area still represents an untamed wilderness and a paradise for the angler. An American bald eagle flies off in search of prey. A popular rendezvous for anglers, bears and fish is the estuary pool of the Brooks River in southwest Alaska. Already, Maurice Turner of Yorkshire is playing a good fish. While right in front of the camera, a young lady is enjoying a sporting contest with a fresh-run sockeye salmon. Most fishing here is done on a catch and release basis with barbless hooks. But, should you need them, you are allowed to kill up to 5 salmon a day. This one should live long enough to serve its prime task on the spawning ground. Meanwhile, Maurice seems to have a tough fight on his hands. When fresh run, these sockeye are one of the most stubborn fighters, but they soon undergo a great physiological change when they assume the colour of goldfish. Certainly they are best caught before they go stale. Then their inevitable death is not far away. In any event, they are not so easy to handtail as our Atlantic salmon. I suppose there could be times when you get slightly bored catching fish in Alaska, but it is such an exciting place that it should be the ambition of every game fisherman to go there just once. But it's always a good plan to leave the water clear for this fellow. He could get very nasty if you got too close. Shadowing the vast shoals of sockeye come the masses of wild rainbow trout to gobble up the eggs shed at spawning time. But now it's my turn to have a cast for one of these great rainbows. And I've hooked one. It may not be a monster, but these are all wild-bred fish, and they have a fighting tenacity which I have rarely found in any other species, anywhere in the world. You may think that Alaska represents a long way to go for a rainbow trout, but you might get one weighing into teens of pounds, and on a light, single-handed rod, that is something very special. However, it is not always easy to remove even a barbless hook. Inevitably, some of the stale sockeye salmon get foul-hooked, but this one is well past its best, and it is quickly horsed in and put back. Again, it's my turn for another playful rainbow. Excepting only the bonefish, I don't think that I have played a more exciting fish. Wintering in the deep lakes, it is not until late May or June that they start to follow the migrating sockeye. Initially, they will feed voraciously on the hatch fry from the previous year, but as soon as the sockeye start to spawn in August, there is a grand banquet. And by the end of the season in September, many of these rainbows will run to double-figure weights. Still a bit lean, but what a lovely colour, and what a prolific wilderness. I'll come back one day. Back at home, it would seem that the all-too-brief summer is quickly coming to an end. Already the chill winds of autumn curl around the hedgerows, and here on Allerton Park Lake in North Yorkshire, there is not much of the season left. But it represents a contrast to Alaska, in that this is one of our well-managed artificial fisheries, and where just occasionally you may tangle with equally big fish. But this is not a monster rainbow, and it will not be many moments before Con Shannon has it safely unhooked and returned to the water. Despite the rich colouring of some autumn days, there is a feeling of general death and decay to all of nature's wonderland. Yorkshire's Wharfdale may pose an idyllic picture, but the rain clouds are gathering, and the first spate on the Little Whitby Esk sees the school sea trout making for the spawning grounds with all haste. It is but a prelude to what may be a long winter. A touch of frost in Wharfdale, and this was the sort of day when the late Reg Regini used to seek his beloved grayling with a trotted wormbait. Despite his extensive expertise and knowledge of this water, there were odd days when, like the rest of us, Reg went fishless. And now the full mantle of winter settles upon the land once again. But there will be lulls and times when other anglers will test their skills. A small North Country stream is the chosen venue for John Roberts. He is yet another expert fisherman whose prime joy is to exploit the brief winter days and find a feeding grayling. My word, he's got one. This might seem an appropriate moment to bring my film to a close, but it would be nicer to end on a sunnier note. So what better than a few December days at the Deepwater Key Club on Grand Bahama Island. On the shallow salt flats of the Bahamas, we are seeking bonefish, arguably the most challenging game fish in the world. Meanwhile, our guide disturbs a sleeping stingray, and there is a minor diversion with a couple of small barracuda which have taken Gracie's lures. Bonefish favour the tropical climes and gin-clear water of not more than 2 foot deep. Being bottom feeders, they are not so readily caught on a fly, and you'll need all the skills of the nymph fisherman to cast your fly where the fish can intercept it without being alarmed. You could wade to stalk your fish, but it is even more comfortable in a skiff as the guide poles you over the likely places. And here are some of the flies you will use. They vaguely represent small crabs and other shellfish. It pays to work out a modest length of line before you have seen your fish. This enables you to come into action more quickly. Invariably, the guide spots one before you do, and then it takes a highly accurate and delicate cast to cover the fish without scaring it away. Gracie's in luck. A small bonefish has taken her fly. It is said that the first run is the most sensational aspect of playing these fish. Indeed, a fish of 5 pounds ran me just over 200 yards non-stop as soon as it felt the hook. It is a form of fishing which requires more skill than any other I know. During my first visit to Deepwater Key, I did not catch a fish until my 4th day, but having the hexagraph helps. A few more tenacious flurries and Gracie's first bonefish comes safely to the net. And so we've come full circle, and it's back to Britain to face another winter and a new and exciting angler's year.